Growing up, Maya was always treated like a princess by our parents. They showered her with love and attention, constantly reminding me how lucky we were to have her. But one ordinary Tuesday evening, a knock on the door shattered our carefully constructed reality, revealing a secret that would change everything we thought we knew about our family. The scent of freshly baked apple pie wafted through our cozy suburban home in Denver, Colorado. It was a typical Tuesday evening, the kind where the mundane comfort of routine settles in like a warm blanket. My parents, Carol and David Miller, were in the kitchen, their familiar banter filling the air as they prepared dinner. I, Natalie, their biological daughter, was in the living room, trying to focus on the novel in my lap, but my attention kept drifting. It wasn't the enticing aroma of Mom's pie that was distracting me, nor the gentle murmur of my parents' conversation. It was the quiet hum of anticipation that always seemed to surround my adopted sister, Maya. Tonight was no different. She was upstairs in her room, presumably lost in her own world of art and music, but her presence always felt significant, almost luminous. Maya had come into our lives when she was 5 years old, a delicate, wide-eyed child who had instantly captured our parents' hearts. They had always been open about her adoption, telling me from a young age that while we didn't share the same blood, we were sisters in every way that mattered. And for the most part, it was true. We shared a home, memories, and the unwavering love of our parents. However, there was always a subtle difference in how our parents treated Maya. It wasn't overt favoritism, not exactly. But there was a certain reverence in their tone when they spoke of her, a constant emphasis on how special she was. "Maya is such a gifted artist, Natalie," Mom would say, admiring Maya's latest watercolor creation. Or, "David, listen to this beautiful melody Maya composed on the piano. She has such a unique talent." I loved Maya. Truly I did. She was kind, gentle, and incredibly creative, but sometimes those comments stung. I was a good student, I volunteered at the local animal shelter, and I was a loyal friend. Yet my accomplishments often seemed to pale in comparison to Maya's innate artistic flair in our parents' eyes. "Dinner's almost ready, girls," Dad's voice boomed from the kitchen. A few moments later, Maya gracefully descended the stairs. She was 16, with long, flowing dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold a depth of understanding beyond her years. She smiled serenely, a small, almost ethereal smile that always made our parents beam. "Smells delicious, Mom," Maya said, her voice soft and melodic. "Just your favorite, sweetie," Mom replied, her gaze full of affection. As we sat down at the dinner table, the conversation naturally revolved around Maya's day. She had won an award for her latest painting at school, and our parents were effusive in their praise. "We always knew you were destined for great things, Maya," Dad said, his voice filled with pride. "You have such a unique perspective on the world," Mom added, her eyes shining. I offered my congratulations, genuinely happy for Maya's success. But a familiar pang of longing echoed in my chest. I had gotten an A on my history paper that day, a paper I had worked incredibly hard on, but the topic never came up. It was a small thing, I knew, but these small things had accumulated over the years. After dinner, as I was helping Mom clear the table, she turned to me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Natalie, dear, could you answer the door if you hear a knock? I'm expecting a delivery." "Sure, Mom," I said, wiping down the counter. A few minutes later, just as I had settled back on the couch with my book, a sharp knock echoed through the house. It wasn't the casual knock of a delivery person. It was more insistent, almost urgent. I frowned and went to the door, peering through the peephole. Standing on our porch were two people I had never seen before. A woman with striking features and an air of quiet elegance stood beside a man with kind eyes and a slightly nervous demeanor. They looked out of place in our quiet suburban neighborhood. Hesitantly, I opened the door. "Can I help you?" I asked. The woman stepped forward, her gaze intense. "We're looking for Maya Miller," she said, her voice carrying a faint, unfamiliar accent. My heart skipped a beat. "She lives here," I replied, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. "Who are you?" The man spoke up, his voice gentle. We're her family." The words hung in the air, heavy and unbelievable. "Her family?" I repeated, my mind struggling to process the information. "But Maya is adopted. Her family is inside." I gestured towards the living room. The woman's expression softened. "We know she was adopted. We've been looking for her for a very long time." Before I could say anything else, Maya walked into the hallway, drawn by the sound of voices. Her eyes widened as she saw the two strangers on our porch. A look of confusion, and something else I couldn't quite decipher, flickered across her face. "Maya?" the woman said, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Maya stared at them, her usual serene composure momentarily shattered. Do I know you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My darling girl," she said, her voice trembling. "It's us. It's your mother. And your uncle." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My parents, hearing the commotion, rushed to the hallway, their faces etched with confusion. "What's going on, Natalie?" Dad asked, his brow furrowed. I turned to them, my voice barely above a whisper. They say they're Maya's real family." A stunned silence descended upon the hallway. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. Dad's face paled. Maya stood frozen, her gaze fixed on the two strangers, her expression a mixture of shock and dawning recognition. The woman stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. "My name is Isabella Rossi," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And this is my brother Marco. We've come all the way from Italy to find you, mia cara." Italy? The word hung in the air, foreign and surreal. Maya had never mentioned any connection to Italy. We had always understood that she came from a local adoption agency. Maya's breath hitched. "Italy?" she repeated, her voice trembling. Marco stepped forward, a gentle smile on his face. "Yes, Maya, you were very young when you were separated from us. There was a terrible accident." His voice trailed off, filled with sadness. Isabella reached out a hand, her fingers hovering hesitantly near Maya's face. Can we come in? We have so much to tell you." My parents exchanged a panicked glance. This was beyond anything they could have imagined. Their special adopted daughter, the center of their world, suddenly had a past they knew nothing about, a family that had been searching for her across continents. "Of course," Dad said finally, his voice sounding strained. "Please, come in." Isabella and Marco stepped inside, their eyes taking in our home, their gaze lingering on Maya. The air in the hallway was thick with unspoken questions and a palpable sense of unease. We all moved into the living room, the comfortable familiarity of the space now feeling strangely inadequate for the momentous revelation that had just occurred. Maya sat on the edge of the armchair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes darting between Isabella and Marco. Isabella began to speak, her voice soft and tinged with a melodic Italian accent. She told a story of a young family, a tragic car accident, and the devastating loss of a child. She spoke of years of searching, of unwavering hope, and finally, a breakthrough that led them to Denver. As Isabella spoke, Maya listened intently, her initial shock slowly giving way to a dawning understanding. Tears welled up in her eyes as Isabella described a small silver locket, a family heirloom that Maya had been wearing when they last saw her. Mom gasped softly, her gaze flying to the delicate silver locket that Maya always wore around her neck. It had been a gift from the adoption agency, a small memento of her past. Marco then produced a photograph, a faded image of a young couple holding a small child. The resemblance to Maya, especially around the eyes, was undeniable. The pieces started to fall into place, forming a picture far more complex and emotional than any of us could have ever imagined. Maya wasn't just an adopted child. She was a missing piece of another family's puzzle, a daughter, a niece, who had been lost and was now found. My parents sat in stunned silence, their faces pale. The foundation of their carefully constructed family seemed to be cracking before their very eyes. The specialness they had always attributed to Maya now took on a whole new meaning, a meaning rooted in a past they had never known. I watched Maya, her face a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, sadness, and a flicker of something that looked like recognition. This wasn't just about our family. It was about her identity, her history, her roots. "We understand this is a lot to take in," Marco said gently, his gaze meeting my parents'. "We don't want to disrupt your lives. We just wanted to find our Mia again, to let her know she wasn't forgotten." "Disrupt?" Mom finally whispered, her voice trembling. This changes everything." Dad reached out and took Mom's hand, his face etched with worry. He looked at Maya, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and a dawning sense of loss. "Maya, honey," he said softly, "we love you very much. You'll always be our daughter." Tears streamed down Maya's face as she looked at our parents, then back at Isabella and Marco. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Isabella stepped forward and gently took Maya's hand. Her touch was warm and comforting. "You don't have to say anything, my darling. Just know that we're here for you. We've waited so long for this moment." The evening unfolded in a haze of questions, tentative answers, and a flood of emotions. Isabella and Marco shared more details about Maya's early childhood, their life in a small town in Tuscany, and the devastating aftermath of the accident that had separated them. They had searched tirelessly for her, never giving up hope. As the night wore on, the initial shock began to subside, replaced by a heavy sense of reality. Maya had another family, a family with a history and a culture that was completely foreign to us. Our comfortable, predictable life had been irrevocably altered by a simple knock on the door. I watched my parents, their faces etched with a mixture of love, confusion, and a deep underlying fear of losing Maya. The special child they had cherished was now connected to a past they had no part in, a past that threatened to pull her away from them. And I looked at Maya, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and a growing sense of wonder. She had always felt a sense of being different, of not quite belonging. Perhaps this was the reason why. Perhaps this was the missing piece of her puzzle. As the night drew to a close, Isabella and Marco prepared to leave, promising to return the next day to talk more. The goodbye was emotional, filled with hesitant hugs and tearful promises. After they left, our house felt strangely empty, the silence amplifying the weight of the revelations. We all sat in the living room, the remnants of the apple pie untouched on the table, the comfortable routine of our Tuesday evening shattered beyond repair. What do we do now?" Mom asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes filled with tears. Dad put his arm around her, his own face pale and drawn. "We support Maya," he said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "Whatever she needs, we'll be there for her." I looked at Maya, who was staring out the window, her silver locket gleaming in the moonlight. Her real family had found her. But what did that mean for our family? What did it mean for Maya? The special girl we had raised was now facing a choice, a journey into a past we knew nothing about. And we had no idea what the future held for any of us. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Isabella and Marco became frequent visitors to our home, sharing stories, photographs, and pieces of Maya's early life in Italy. We learned about her birth name, Sofia Rossi, her love for the rolling hills of Tuscany, and the vibrant, close-knit community she had been a part of before the accident. My parents, though initially overwhelmed and fearful, tried their best to embrace Isabella and Marco. They asked questions, shared memories of Maya's childhood with us, and attempted to bridge the cultural gap that suddenly loomed large. It wasn't easy. There were moments of awkwardness, of unspoken anxieties, but their love for Maya, for Sofia, was undeniable. Maya, or Sofia as Isabella and Marco affectionately called her, was navigating a complex emotional landscape. She was drawn to her biological family, intrigued by the stories of her past and the undeniable connection she felt with Isabella and Marco. Yet, she also felt a deep loyalty and love for my parents, the only family she had ever truly known. I watched her carefully, trying to understand what she was going through. She spent hours talking with Isabella and Marco, her Italian slowly returning as they reminisced about her early years. She would then come downstairs and share some of these memories with us, her eyes filled with a mixture of wonder and a hint of sadness. One evening, as we were all gathered in the living room, Isabella broached a sensitive topic. "Sophia," she began gently, her Italian accent more pronounced when she was emotional. "Marco and we would love for you to come back to Italy with us, to see your home, to meet the rest of our family." The air in the room grew heavy. My parents exchanged a worried glance, their fear of losing Maya suddenly palpable. Maya looked down at her hands, her expression unreadable. I don't know," she said softly. "This is all happening so fast." "Of course, my darling," Isabella replied, her voice understanding. "There's no rush. We just wanted to extend the invitation." Over the next few weeks, the pressure on Maya intensified. Isabella and Marco painted a vivid picture of her life in Italy, a loving, extended family, the beauty of the Tuscan countryside, a life rich in culture and tradition. They showed her videos of her childhood home, her cousins, and the small town where she had grown up. Maya was undeniably drawn to this world she had forgotten. She spent hours looking at the photographs, her eyes filled with a longing for a past she couldn't fully remember. But the thought of leaving my parents, of leaving the only home she had truly known, was clearly tearing her apart. One afternoon, I found Maya in her room, surrounded by photographs and letters from Isabella and Marco. She was crying softly, her shoulders shaking. "Hey," I said gently, sitting down beside her on the bed. "What's wrong?" She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "I don't know what to do, Natalie," she sobbed. "I love Mom and Dad so much. They're my family. But Isabella and Marco, they're my family too. I feel like I have to choose, and I don't know how." I put my arm around her, pulling her close. "You don't have to choose right now, Maya," I said, using the name she had grown up with, the name that felt most natural to me. "Take your time. Think about what's best for you." "But what if I make the wrong decision?" she asked, her voice filled with anguish. "What if I hurt someone?" "You're not going to make the wrong decision, Maya," I said, squeezing her hand. "Whatever you choose, it will be the right decision for you. And Mom and Dad, they love you. They'll understand." I wasn't entirely sure if that was true, but I needed to reassure her. The tension in our house reached its peak when Isabella and Marco announced that they had to return to Italy in a week. They made it clear that they wanted Maya to come with them, to start rebuilding her life with her biological family. The night before their departure, we had a family meeting in the living room. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken emotions. My parents sat on the sofa, their faces etched with anxiety. Maya sat in the armchair, her gaze fixed on the floor. Isabella and Marco sat opposite them, their expressions a mixture of hope and concern. "Sophia, my darling," Isabella began, her voice soft but firm, "we need to know your decision. Our flight leaves tomorrow. We understand this is difficult, but we need an answer." Maya finally looked up, her eyes filled with tears. She looked at my parents, her expression pleading. "Mom, Dad, Her voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Mom reached out and took Maya's hand, her own hand trembling slightly. "Honey, we want you to be happy," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Whatever you decide, we'll support you." Dad nodded in agreement, his eyes filled with love and a hint of sadness. Maya took a deep breath, her gaze shifting to Isabella and Marco. I want to go to Italy with you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A wave of emotion washed over the room. Isabella gasped, tears streaming down her face as she reached out and hugged Maya tightly. Marco's eyes filled with tears of joy. My parents' faces, however, were etched with a profound sadness. Mom's lower lip trembled, and Dad's eyes glistened with unshed tears. It was the moment they had dreaded, the moment they had known might come. "Oh, honey," Mom whispered, her voice breaking. "We're going to miss you so much." "I'll miss you too, Mom," Maya sobbed, turning to embrace her. She hugged Dad tightly as well, tears flowing freely. The goodbye the next day at the airport was heart-wrenching. There were tearful embraces, whispered promises to stay in touch, and a palpable sense of loss. As Maya walked through the security gate with Isabella and Marco, a piece of our family went with her. The house felt eerily quiet after they left. Mom cried for days, and Dad moved through the house with a heavy heart. I tried to be strong for them, but I felt a profound sense of emptiness myself. Maya, my sister, my constant presence, was gone. Life slowly found a new rhythm. We adjusted to video calls and emails, staying connected with Maya as she settled into her new life in Italy. She described the beauty of Tuscany, her large extended family, and the joy of rediscovering her roots. A year later, my parents and I decided to visit Maya in Italy. It was an emotional reunion. Seeing her surrounded by her biological family, speaking fluent Italian, and embracing her heritage was both heartwarming and bittersweet. She was happy, truly happy, and that brought us a sense of peace, even amidst our own sadness. Over the years, Maya, or Sophia, built a beautiful life for herself in Italy. She pursued her art, found love, and started a family of her own. She remained a part of our lives, visiting us in Denver whenever she could, and we often traveled to Italy to see her. Our family had changed, irrevocably. The comfortable dynamic we had known for so long had been disrupted by the arrival of Maya's biological family. But through it all, our love for her remained constant. We had learned that family wasn't just about blood. It was about connection, love, and the bonds that tie us together, no matter the distance or the circumstances. My parents, though they initially feared losing Maya, eventually found a sense of acceptance and even joy in her expanded family. They embraced Isabella and Marco as part of their own, forging a unique and complex family unit that spanned continents and cultures.